I think we got this thing cobbled together. We got enough duct tape back here to put a blockchain meetup together. So we have participants. We've got a live stream in. We've got a speaker here. We've got all of you. We've got. I'll jump right in. Thank you all for being here. This is awesome. I get so excited to see this many faces in Nashville talking about blockchain, talking about healthcare, talking about, like, this is the launching pad. More? Okay, how about I talk into the microphone? So first, let me thank our sponsors. We've got the originating group, John Bass and Hashed Health. Most of the team's here, so please seek them out. BTC Media and their distributed conferences and publications. They've been a supporter of this since the beginning, and quite an asset for Nashville to have. So they're one of those quiet forces in the crypto space. So we're lucky to have them. And then our friends from Frost Brown Todd. They've been with us since the beginning, and we're truly grateful for their expertise and their continued support. I know I saw some of them at the back, John Wagster and a couple others. So also Honky Tonk Brewing Company. They provided the beer, so thank you. I hope some of you got to meet Scott Swigert. He's the owner of the brewery. He gives us a deal every month that would make a fraternity house cry. It's made this whole thing possible. So, and then finally, our friends here at WeWork. They're obviously the venue sponsor for the evening. So. That said, we've got some exciting programs lined up for the rest of this year, and we're always looking to add to our list of partners and sponsors to help bring those folks in. We've got some real talent in town, but it never hurts to throw a plane ticket, or if this group keeps growing, I think we're going to have to go find, we're going to run out of free venues to meet in. So anyway, would love to talk to anyone that wants to get involved in the live stream, the podcast, the meetup, the Rocket Chat platform, any of those outlets as a sponsor or just a partner in them. And speaking of Rocket Chat, I hope you've all had an opportunity to download and try the Rocket Chat platform. We rolled that out as a response to so many requests to continue this conversation in between meetups and conferences. Like, it just became impossible for us at Hash to answer the questions that were coming in one at a time. So we said, let's just build a tent and fill it with people, smart people thinking creatively about healthcare, about blockchain, and let's let the conversation grow. And it truly has. We're, you know, the collective is a truly global platform. I think we've got a little more than 500 people there. We've got registrants from around the globe. I know we've got some of those registrants, some of those registered Rocket Chat users tuned in tonight via the live stream. So that's fun and exciting. And you know, as after we all leave here tonight, the conversation will continue. So if you've got questions for presenters or amongst yourselves, like that's the platform on which it will continue. So. I'm going to put someone on spot. Is Teresa close by? If she's close by, we may come back to. Oh, do you want to say? So we want. So WeWork obviously is sponsor for tonight. They've graciously given us the venue. I don't know if you probably saw. WeWork purchased the platform Meetup.com, and they are working to sort of integrate the two. So it's the online community and the presence in neighborhoods like this. And we moved in day one, and they've been very good to us. But just sort of highlight what they're doing, and come take a tour. It's been a great collaborative space. There's a lot of cool stuff going on here. So as we jump off, I'm going to introduce our first guest. We've got our percussion section. So our first guest tonight, Anthony Begando. Anthony has a history of building high-functioning companies and creating solutions to very complex problems. He's developed and led numerous ventures, from healthcare software companies to consulting firms to outsource operations and other tech-enabled services. His clients have ranged from the military to Fortune 500 firms to major health systems to middle market ventures and growth stage firms. So much of his career has been in and around the credentialing space, and he's here tonight to talk about how blockchain is going to change an antiquated and slow sector. And we've actually got a blockchain demo, a use case. It's not all talk anymore. So I'm gonna put Anthony on to tell you about it.
Thank you all very much. How can you all hear me back there, especially back in the back? Is that okay? I know it's a little loud, but a few minutes ago. Well, hello. I'm Anthony Begando. It's a pleasure to be here with you all tonight. Free beer and a great setup. I don't think anybody else could ask for more than that, right? And it's a beautiful spring evening outside as well. So, you know, as Giles mentioned, I have been in and around practitioner credentialing and identity for many, many years, from consulting perspective, helping build solutions that fix problems, from an outsourcing perspective, running operations for clients, and also from a technology perspective in terms of building systems to manage this process. And, you know, it is, in my opinion, we'll talk a little bit more about this as we get into the presentation, but in my opinion, it is an ideal use case for enterprise blockchain technology to have a game-changing impact on an area of healthcare that has been broken, tremendously broken, frankly, for many, many years. So first of all, you know, Hash Health and my consulting firm put together a joint venture to really address this problem. The venture is called the Professional Credentialing Exchange, and I want to underline the word exchange, because we're going to come back to this quite a bit in this conversation. It's really, truly infrastructure meant to help different systems, different entities, and frankly, anyone who's in the healthcare market request and receive information about healthcare practitioners that is often very difficult to ascertain, very difficult to verify, and very costly from a time and expense perspective. Credentialing, and just a show of hands, how many folks in this room have ever heard of healthcare credentialing before? Wow, that's impressive. As many of you probably know, healthcare credentialing is very complex. It basically is a function of going through someone's entire dossier of experience, education, clinical practices, their licensure, their board certifications, and DEA licenses, and so forth, to make sure that an individual is clinically competent to deliver care in a very specific clinical setting. So what I mean by that is, you may have a skill set, like you're a surgeon, and you do general surgery and so on and so forth, and you're well suited for hospital X. But if you're a pediatric hand surgeon and you're working in a clinic, a outpatient surgical clinic, there may not be a great clinical competency fit for that specific instance of care. So what credentialing tries to do is map someone's lifetime experience to the here and now, and say, is someone appropriate for this setting? And if there is a little inappropriateness, there's some problems defining what the training needs to be to get them to upskilled and so on and so forth. And this process takes months to complete. If you can imagine, I was talking to a member of our audience a little bit earlier today, mail as being a primary method of communication. It's 2018. Snail mail still pervades in this area, where someone writes a letter to a hospital and says, I need an employment verification from 1998 to 2005 for Dr. Jones. Can you please respond to my letter and send me back a written verification that this exists? 6 weeks later, they get the letter. They call the person who wrote the letter. Hi, I'm John Smith at Hospital X. Am I speaking to Mary Jones? Mary, did you in fact send me a letter that said that Dr. Smith was at your hospital? Okay, great. I want to verify that this is okay, and now I feel comfortable that this employment verification is accurate. It's 2018, right? This is what still happens pervasively in our marketplace today. The fundamental reason why this happens, trust. There is a lack of trust that is in the marketplace, where folks just simply don't trust a piece of paper that they're given that says, I, in fact, worked at this location at this time. Moreover, regulatory bodies, accreditation bodies require primary source verification to go out and verify that piece of information that you're relying on to employ someone or to contract with someone or to pay someone is in fact real, right? So delays in this process, and this is a very important metric, delays for a hospital alone in leveraging a practitioner to work are in the neighborhood of about $7,500 per day of net real revenue. right? You know, hospitalists, PAs, nurse practitioners maybe a little lower, specialists like cardiologists and ER docs maybe much higher, right? But the average per day is about $7,500 so that a hospital forfeits in waiting for this process to play out. Virtually everyone in healthcare who must see, support, pay for, you know, whatever, you know, a practitioner, has to be in some way, shape, or form credentialed. We did actually an analysis to look at medical aids in home healthcare, right? Folks who we think are very entry-level healthcare practitioners. They had about 1/3 the amount of credentials that a brain surgeon requires to actually see patients. So, you know, there's not, you know, there's a substantial amount of information needs to be collected for any kind of practitioner that delivers or supports care. Blockchain is a game changer. Why? Well, I read a white paper about a year ago from Dr. John Sotos, who's the Chief Medical Officer for Intel Corporation out in California. He's also the state surgeon for the Army National Guard, or the Air National Guard in California. And I had known him indirectly through my military work that I had done previously. He wrote a great white paper saying, gosh, credentialing is the perfect use case for healthcare blockchain emergence. We had a couple of conversations, met out at a conference, at the Distributed Conference in September, that actually ultimately led me to the great folks at Hash Health, and here I am today. Right? This is the ideal initial use case for blockchain in healthcare. We're not dealing with patient data. We're not dealing with claims data. We're not dealing with payment processing. We're dealing with an administrative problem that lacks trust. Okay? We're also, basically focused on building something that allows counterparties, like an exchange, to exchange information back and forth between themselves and not worry about, I don't know someone from this hospital in Iowa. I need Dr. Smith's verified employment or verified malpractice claim or what have you. And I can trust that the information that this party is submitting is in fact unchanged, viable, and I can rely on it for forever. Finally, we're not building a credentialing system. There are scores of credentialing systems that exist in the marketplace today. I want to emphasize that we're building network infrastructure that will allow these different systems to, through APIs and other methods and mechanisms, call out and request for verified credentials and be able to rely through the blockchain aspects of the platform that this information is in fact correct. So one of the hardest nuts to crack in this problem was the data set. Credentials data is very, very complex. Anything can be called a credential, right? And what I mean by that is your driver's license, an ID card for a specific facility, your auto registration, your licensure, your board certs, and all the other clinical stuff that you can come to think of. Any organization can define any kind of data, a credential, and require it for employment or enrollment. The data is itself very, very unstructured. And what I mean by that, a state license from Tennessee to practice medicine may look very different data-wise than a state license from the state of Georgia to perform the same exact skill. A nursing license in Idaho may have very different data than a nursing license in Florida, right? And you've got to be able to accommodate that. And what every vendor in the marketplace heretofore has tried to do is smash a round, unstructured peg in a relational data model, right? Trying to find a way to make unstructured data sets like SQL Server et al. Support this very unstructured data, and it just doesn't work. When you bastardize a database and you customize it and you allow for all kinds of user configuration, you create a model that is unshareable. You can't exchange data electronically because column 34 says Minnesota state license CME count, column 35 says Oregon license CME count, and so on and so forth, and you lack the ability to easily exchange data back and forth between counterparties. Furthermore, there's a very complex set of analytics that go along with credentials data, meaning every organization contextually may analyze and interpret that data a little differently. There is no standard. There is no right or wrong. It's up to the individual organization to determine if the information that they've been presented is in fact aligned and compliant with their specific requirements, right? So, what we see today is a lot of folks out there saying that, I need to have 15 years of experience to go and look through this 45 or 145 set of credentialing elements and make sense of it and make sure that this information actually is accurate and complies with our policies and the practitioner is competent to practice in our organization. Finally, there's massive redundancy with both data and process throughout the market. Imagine, if you will, if you're a practitioner, you're employed by 2 hospital systems here in Nashville. Each of those hospital systems has 25 to 30 different payer contracts that they are contracted to work with. They have 5 or 6 different outpatient clinics that they work with, and 3 or 4 different provider networks that are part of their system or their organization. Every single one of those provider entity relationships will collect, verify, and analyze that data individually. There's a few exceptions, one being a thing called delegated credentialing, where if you're an accredited organization, you can work with the payers to do their credentialing for them, but that's rare, right? So imagine how many times this information is collected, verified, and analyzed by every party to get this person working and billable at an organization. This is why it takes 4 to 6 months to get someone from a date of hire to fully credentialed and enrolled with all the payers and organizations that are contracted with a specific entity. So I'm not going to sit here and lecture you all on blockchain, and I'm with a room full of experts. I want to emphasize one thing. Again, this is the ideal early use case because we're not dealing with sensitive, concerning, quote-unquote, data. We're dealing with an administrative problem that lacks trust, and trust is a fundamental reason why this process is so broken in the marketplace. So this also applies to every sector of the healthcare marketplace. This isn't a hospital problem. This isn't a payer problem. This isn't a network problem. This isn't a telemedicine problem. This is a everybody problem. And we are basically approaching this market in a way where we say, look, we're going to build a solution for everyone. And we're going to give you the connectors and the ability to call out, request, and receive this information and know that it is accurate and know that it has, in fact, not been commingled or what have you. There are about 13 million folks in the marketplace today that transact about 220 million credentialing artifact transactions back and forth between different healthcare counterparties every year. There is not one segment of the healthcare market that is immune from this problem. So, I'm not going to go through a whole laundry list of problems we solve, but the bottom line is that we're fixing the employability, mobility, and transferability of healthcare delivery by and between different organizations. So, for example, if you're a physician and you want to work 1 day a week at a telemedicine company, or you want to spend, do 2 shifts a month at an outpatient specialty clinic, the pain and delay and effort to go get that work initiated, e.g. credentialing and privileging, we aim to greatly reduce, right? We also, want to make sure that folks have accurate data. We were at HIMSS last week and had a great experience there, great, integration with that organization and the crowd there. And one thing I heard time and time again, directory data. We got to maintain the directory data because payers are getting killed with fines because they have inaccurate information on practitioner addresses, which different payers they're enrolled with and are receiving patients from. Well, where do you think a lot of that data comes from intrinsically? Right here, credentials. Rather than going through 5 or 6 different data sets or data feeds to try and find anomalies in data, we can actually ask the practitioner, hey, we've got 2 addresses on file for you. Which one's right? Tell us that very simply, right? So it's sometimes frustrating to me. I'm sorry, I get a little emotional when I talk about it. It's frustrating to me to know that here we are in 2018 and we've got this golden apple sitting in front of us called blockchain, and we've got a huge problem that we're going to solve, and it's looking us right in the eyes. A couple of other things: practitioner centricity. Right, we want to make sure the practitioner is helping to manage this information by and between all of the counterparties which they work with. So, for example, if you have as I mentioned ago, a relation with 40 or so different entities, we're asking from you what the collection of those organizations want in unison. And we're not asking you to fill out 55 different sets of forms. We're asking you to simply just give us the data, verify information that might be conflicting, and support the collaboration between all these different organizations. We have, as I mentioned before, a very I think elegant data model that we've designed and engineered to support this very complex set. We've got the ability through some AI-like capabilities and machine learning capabilities to analyze that data on a client-by-client or member-by-member basis. And we can deliver this information, through either APIs or through other, streams that are most effective for a requesting organization. Finally, we've built this entire platform to be occupationally and location agnostic. And the reason being is some of our earlier military work, pointed out that we not only had a surgeon who had a pilot who is also a flight surgeon, who also worked for the emergency response organization and need to be, cleared as a emergency responder and all kinds of compounding occupations. And our platform will allow anyone to define, here are the credentials I need for this specific occupation or group of occupations, and I need it to match these business rules and these validation checks and deliver to me in a form and substance that looks like X. And again, blockchain confirms the provenance and the immutability of the information in total across the platform. I'm not going to go through this slide. This is more of the same. Our stack, we really took a hard look at what would be acceptable in the marketplace. We've built a pretty .NET heavy stack, that works well within the healthcare market. On the back end, our data model is a hybrid data set that's comprised of MongoDB and SQL Azure, with a performance cache we built that supports that integration. On the blockchain side, we're working with Microsoft right now and looking at their Cocoa framework, as well as Sawtooth Lake, and all the stuff that goes along with that. And then on the platform side, we've built all of our applications in C# on .NET and RESTful APIs. All of our UX is all based on HTML5, and all the good stuff goes along with that. I know I'm kind of preaching to the choir in this audience. And we've got APIs that we're developing for both vendors as well as primary sources of information, so we can push and pull stuff electronically from them. Finally, the last thing I want to leave you with. Oh, time's up. Time's up. Is that the BS meter going off back there, I think? So, I think somebody's wife might be calling. Excuse me. We're building a solution that connects everyone in the marketplace together. You may be requesting a verified piece of information from a locum tenens company, or from a telemedicine provider, or from a medical network, or from a dental office. It doesn't matter. Right? We've engineered this solution to apply to everyone, collectively. All right, so I'm going to give you all, if you just bear with me for 1 second, give you all just a little quick demonstration of what this actually looks like. I found it kind of fascinating when we were out of HIMSS last week to help folks actually visualize, well, what does blockchain actually look like, right? What's the information that's yielded from this process? What we've done here is we put together a quick, look at how information is processed. And what you see here is we've got this hospital called Mercy Hospital. And, oh, you know what? Bear with me, folks, 1 second. Hold on. How's that? There we go. Okay. So, we've got this hospital, Mercy Hospital. It's a fake hospital, made up name, and all patient data is fake for the record, or practitioner data is fake for the record. And they're managing right now 4 different healthcare practitioners. And what they've done is they've gone onto the exchange and they've said, I want to manage a set of information, I'll request a set of information from the exchange that includes board certifications, their DEA licensure, their education, their employment history, identification, and so on and so forth. These various classes of information. And also, let's recognize that their credentialing system may get a bunch of other information electronically already from the different sources, and they don't need that information from the exchange. They just need this data, right? So, if we go and look at their board certifications, we can see that Dr. Anderson here has 2, an active and an inactive board cert from the American Board of Surgery. And again, as I mentioned earlier, we've captured the information that comes along with this specific kind of credential. And the thing for the technologists here in the room, we've data typed these credentials, right? That's what this artifact type is. It defines the specific data that is engaged in that credential itself. So if this is a American Board of Surgery board certification, we know that these data elements are the common data elements that come with that credential. We also standardize, and I want to use that term not loosely but not empirically, that the data elements themselves that compose the credentials are standard, meaning expiration date is expiration date everywhere. We don't have EXP date, we don't have end date. So if you're looking at a non-structured element, you can search for if there's an expiration date and look for that one time, right? Anyhow, you know, we look at the fact that we received this credential, in this case, directly, electronically from a primary source through their own API, and, you know, the data that came along with it. We then, you know, can look at the actual blockchain details of this and see that on the platform, the artifact is identified this way, that it was directly verified with the primary source, as I mentioned earlier. It was verified active without limitations. The issuing authority was the ABS, that there's an image that came along with it, the block it sits on, the hash of the block, and the fact that 47 different organizations have utilized this specific credential since it was put on the exchange. That there are no carried fees, meaning if you, for example, you know, charge a fee for a credential to acquire a credential, you know, the agency isn't carrying that fee through our network to the end user, that there are no user fees associated with this, and we'll talk about that in a minute, and that there is a 19-cent transaction fee to acquire this specific piece of information. And then, of course, this particular entity provides a PDF image of the document that comes along with the credential for consumption by the end user, and we've captured that PDF as well here. Okay. Another kind of credential that's extremely difficult at times to acquire are education credentials, right? You know, here are the 4 different types of education credentials that this practitioner has in their profile. There's the Vanderbilt undergraduate in biology. There's West Virginia School of Osteopathic Medicine, where they got their practitioner license. They did an internship in the Navy, and they also did a residency at Charleston Area Medical Center. We can see that the practitioner themselves faxed into somebody a copy of their biology undergrad transcript, and that it was then verified, work our way backwards here, by 2 separate independent agencies. Right? We see that, who's this? Elliot, I'm sure people put these names in here to kill me. Elliot Lewis initially verified this information, right? And we can see that, I don't have a way of showing the details of this right here, but we can see that the hash that was actually associated with that verification is here, and that at some point in the future, Aura Grozanski, if that's the right name, re-verified this same information, you know, and then we basically, you know, can say that this was then verified by consensus, meaning that 2 independent parties have verified it, and if, you know, pending blessing by regulatory authorities, that this information doesn't need to be re-verified by anybody else in the future, because we know of its provenance and we know of its accuracy. Okay? So there's a whole lot of other stuff in here. I'm not going to waste y'all's time in going through that. You know, bottom line, we're very excited about blockchain, very excited about this use case, and you know, believe that there's a very bright future, you know, in the market for a solution such as this. Questions? I'm sorry? Okay. Somebody, I can't see the online question, so go ahead. So the consent, verified by consensus, has nothing to do with the consensus mechanism per se. It means that individual entities have actually verified, you know, has gone through and verified, you know, the provenance and the validity of this, like a faxed in letter or the document itself.
Sawtooth uses proof of elapsed time.
Yeah, go ahead.
If it is built on Sawtooth Lake, it uses proof of elapsed time, which is a variant of PBFT. And this is for a permissioned private blockchain network run by consumers and producers of the data itself.
Does that answer your question? Okay, great. Other questions? All right. Oh, go ahead. This is a great question. So I'm an optimist. All right. Obviously, I mean, you can't be an entrepreneur and not be an optimist, right? But I'm an optimist, and I have done this for almost 20 years. I want to see this process go from 4 months to a day, 2 days, right? Because what's going to happen, if I go through a very simple user story, if I can get all of these hard to find credentials, right? It's not the license verification typically. It's not the the board certification. Usually those are very easily acquired and go online on the web and go get them right now. It's these hard things: malpractice claim investigations, employment verifications from 20 years ago, privilege delineations from 20 years ago. If somebody has this information and can verify it, there's no reason for me to write a letter or find somebody who worked with this person 20 years ago and talk to them on the phone and verify that they actually did work at XYZ hospital before they moved on to ABC hospital. So we want to see this. We want to create this exchange, create the economic incentive to participate in the exchange for all parties, and then ultimately collect this data and minimize the repetition that's out there. So days, hours would be awesome. Days are what I'm hoping for.
We have a question from online.
Go ahead.
I can ask it.
Yep.
So on Rocket Chat, Lane Sandridge asked, what are the options for consumers to integrate the trusted data with in-house downstream operational workflows?
So again, we're not building the workflow system, right? I want to be very, very clear about that. We're building network infrastructure. So the ability to consume this data and pull it into your existing credentialing, privileging, practitioner management systems is pure, right? So we don't want to impede those or interfere with those or compete with those. And we want to build the infrastructure out that allows that direct integration. Okay? Raymond. So I think the key thing to consider around this process is that the easy stuff is easy, the hard stuff is hard. And somebody has to invest time and effort into collecting some of these hard to find credentials. And there's a value to that, right? And if essentially your organization spends $1,000 of labor to go out and investigate a malpractice claim, which may yield 150-page finding, and report that's reviewed by the chief medical officer of the hospital before they, give a thumbs up or thumbs down on hiring a practitioner. If you can acquire that and resell it on the platform to the next organization or the next 40 organizations that want to consume that data and give them the option, hey, if you can buy this for $50 and present it to your chief medical officer or do it all yourself, I think there's a very high degree of interest in not doing it yourself if you don't have to. So it's truly an exchange, right? And we're creating the economics incentives to do a couple of things. I think one, incent early adoption. First in the pool has the greatest chance of reselling this information to the greater market, right? And secondly, there needs to be an exchange of value. If someone has invested thousands of dollars in doing a credentialing episode, they should be remunerated for that work. So I feel like I'm getting the hook here. So listen to y'all. It's been great talking to you. I'm going to be around here for a while, so please come up and ask me any questions you may have. And thanks again to Hash and WeWork and everything else.
Okay, so we'll come back at the end for more questions. Obviously, this continues on the Rocket Chat platform, so let's keep those questions coming up. Now is where we're going to test whether or not we can. We're going to test our skills. Our next speaker is coming in live. I'm going to introduce Dr. Thomas Cox is a blockchain governance expert who works in the EOSIO blockchain ecosystem. He holds a degree in behavioral science from the University of Chicago. His early career at Oracle was focused on relational database system design. By the time he worked at IBM, he'd begun to focus on the leadership changes of software teams and discovered the only universal truth of leadership. He's also author of a book on database technology, co-author of a chapter in a textbook on trauma surgery, and a former operations director of a medical clinic, and once ran for governor in his home state of Oregon on the Libertarian ticket. Mr. Cox was recruited in the blockchain industry last year and has been working on governance ever since. So I'm delighted to introduce him and thank him for joining us. And now let's see if we can hear him. I'm going to go drink a beer because I'm going to be pretty thrilled. So
let's find out if you can hear me.
We got it.
You got it? Can you still hear me? Give me a thumbs up or a wave, somebody in the front row, if you can hear me.
There we go. You're full screen. Oh, sorry, we got to do the phone again.
Okay, now you need this to hear me?
Now you go. Okay, there's your microphone. Sorry about that.
It's so confusing, this technology thing.
Blockchain's going to fix it.
Yeah, no, right, yeah.
Fixes everything.
Magic blockchain.
Yes.
Sprinkle magic blockchain dust and everything, and it'll all work.
Okay,
So what is blockchain governance? And what is the impact on all of you? The environment I'm working in is halfway between the demonstration we just saw and what many of us are familiar with in the Bitcoin universe. So let me describe to you the distinction between these three. In the Bitcoin world, we live in what I call lava jungle. If you can steal someone's tokens, you succeed, hooray you. People are DDoSing each other's servers in order to get a competitive advantage to make the next block. The code is the law, might makes right. And you're not going to get commercial applications running in an environment like that. You're not going to want to see, your mom or your grandma working in an environment like that. Then we've got the hyperledger fabrics, the Ripples of the world, the things that are really well built for consortia. And if Bitcoin's the law of the jungle, then this other approach might be seen as the walled castle. Whoever set it up controls who the block producers are, they control who's credentialed, and it has a whole bunch of benefits, as we know from blockchain, but it also has limitations. We are creating a third thing, a hybrid, a public yet permissioned blockchain using the EOSIO software. And what makes it different, and rather than law of the jungle or some sort of castle with walls around it, it looks a lot more like a Swiss village, where if you're a token holder, you have a voice and a vote, where rather than the code being the law, instead the intention of the human beings involved in a transaction outranks the code. And if you were to send tokens to the wrong contract and they get stuck there, well, on Ethereum, you can't get those tokens back. On an EOSIO-based system, you absolutely could, because every transaction is governed by a constitution, and the constitution empowers the process of arbitration. And that means if you're unhappy with the transaction, you can say, excuse me, need an arbitrator over here. And you'd be assigned an arbitrator who would hear both sides, issue a ruling, and the block producers have the power, if and only if they receive a duly noted arbitration ruling, to change the state of the blockchain from what it was to what the arbitrator just said it needs to be. And that could be returning tokens, it could be freezing a broken contract, it could be replacing code. This means that rather than the code being the law, the human relationships are the law. And that opens up a whole bunch of issues around governance. Who's going to be the block producer? Who's going to make decisions? How will decisions be made? Because governance really is two things. It's how shall we make collective decisions? How shall we carry out those decisions in an orderly, transparent way? And how shall we tweak the rules and modify the Constitution if we find that the rules really aren't quite what we'd like them to be? This is unparalleled in the blockchain universe. I'll walk you through a use case. Let's say that one of you has written a smart contract. It seems to be working pretty well, and then somebody finds a hack in it, kind of like the DAO hacks. Is anybody in there familiar with the DAO hack from Ethereum? Yeah, some of you. So was it $50 million lost and the Ethereum chain went corporate? instead of people wondering, gosh, what shall we do, and then creating a workaround off the chain, or essentially, rather than it being an immutable blockchain, it's the Vitalik blockchain, because everyone's like, well, what should we do? And Vitalik said, we'll roll it back. If you were affected by something like that, this contract going off the rails,
you would alert one of the block producers.
Say, I have an emergency problem. I need this contract right here frozen, and I'll take responsibility for that. Block producers can communicate amongst themselves. 15 of the 21 block producers agree. The contract is frozen. They then look to you and say, okay, you just did something big. You just froze someone's contract. What do they have to say about it? And you and the contract writer might then go into arbitration. And if you were disingenuous, it was a perfectly good contract, you just didn't want to pay your half. Or if you and a block
producer colluded to freeze something that shouldn't have been frozen,
all of you can be on the hook for damages awarded by the arbitrator and enforced by the other block producers. If one of the rules needs to say EOSIO is set up with 21 block producers voted by the token holders. Suppose 21 doesn't feel like the right number, you want to move to 23. You can propose that. We'd hold a vote of token holders, one token, one vote. And when enough people say, yeah, we like it, the block producers say, okay, I see a majority or supermajority here. And when 15 block producers out of the 21, that's 2/3 plus 1, agree that this rule should change, it goes in a 30-day waiting period. And after 30 days of maintaining that majority, that supermajority of 15, it simply becomes the new rule, and the blockchain state is changed. So we can fix the code, we can upgrade the rules of the blockchain, we can hold arbitration and enforce arbitration rulings. All the things that we need as human beings to get along with each other in the world that blockchains historically have not been able to provide us. And that's the short version. And I don't have a slide deck for this. I would like to get your questions. I'd like to know who you already know about EOSIO, if anybody. One guy in the back. And the distinctions between it and Ethereum, which is probably the closest similar system. Like Ethereum, the EOSIO software will run smart contracts. Unlike Ethereum, it will not use transaction fees. It's built like a co-op. When you buy into an EOSIO-based blockchain, you buy a certain number of tokens, and then those tokens enable you, they entitle you to a share of the bandwidth of the system proportionate to how many tokens you're using compared to the tokens you own by all the other people who are active in that moment. So you may not have huge bandwidth, but you can't be frozen out.
Do we have any questions from the audience? You can come up here so that Thomas can hear you, or I can repeat them, or we'll check Rocket Chat in a second here, see if any have come through. But and then I'll pull Anthony back in, and he can answer some questions too. So we've got open forum, online, offline, and.
Charles, what was the status of the EOS project in terms of readiness?
So question from the audience, from John, what's the status of the EOS project and its readiness?
We have a smart contract ticking, and we are going to go live, ready or not, 10 p.m. Universal Time on the 2nd of June. So we're launching on June 2nd. It'll be about 6 p.m. on the East Coast of the U.S. And we appear to be on schedule, at least so far, knock on wood. We'll see how that turns out. We're in the home stretch right now.
And at that moment at 6 p.m., what happens?
That's the moment when the tokens freeze. We're in a pre-sale now, a distribution of tokens. And their goal is to make the token distribution as broad as possible. So as a US-based employee, I'm unable to talk about a token distribution. The SEC doesn't like that. And U.S. citizens are not permitted to participate in that anyway.
Got an appreciative laugh from the audience there.
That day, that pre-sale ends, and the tokens freeze, and the community is going to take a snapshot of the token balances and spin up a new chain where everybody that had pre-sale tokens now have tokens on an up and running blockchain.
Okay, we've got another question from the audience. I'm going to turn the microphone over.
How you doing? My name is Dion.
Yeah.
I got a question. So I'm sure you're familiar with the Ethereum DAO hack. How does EOS plan to, I guess, differentiate itself compared to centralized systems such as Ethereum?
Well, I don't know that Ethereum is particularly centralized. Some of our differentiators are that we're a whole lot faster. I'm not sure if we're going to be 10 times or 100 times faster when we launch, but let's just say we'll be a lot faster.
Is there any circumstances where you would alter the ledger?
Absolutely, yes. And I just described it to you a little earlier, although I might not have used those terms and maybe I should have. So let's go with the DAO hack. Someone ports the DAO over, has the same bug, someone hacks it, and you start to see the money come flowing out of it. 50 million, instead of Ether would be EOS, but 50 million bucks worth of tokens get drained out of it over into the Citadel account. Everyone's staring at it going, what do we do? Except on the EOSIO software system, someone would say, somebody freeze that thing. And the block producers would freeze it. They'd freeze both the contract, which is obviously broken, and the destination account. And then an arbitrator would look into things, and an arbitrator would issue a ruling saying, that's a hack. It violates the intention of the contract, even though the code executed. Remember, the intention outranks the code.
Right.
There's nothing in the contract that says, we'd like people to steal our stuff.
Right.
So having frozen it, the arbitrator rules, put that money back.
Okay.
So the majority of block producers will put that in a queue, and 30 days later, it will roll forward as a change.
Gotcha. So there would be no need to fork the coin.
No need to fork. In fact, we can upgrade our software without a fork.
Good news. Awesome. Well, thank you. That answered my question.
Good. It's an important question. People in the room who don't know what the DAO hack is have no idea how incredibly important that question was.
Another question from the audience was, who are the arbitrators?
Well, the arbitrators are selected by the disputants. And typically, most smart contracts are going to have baked into them, one of our standards, all disputes that arise under this particular contract will be decided by arbitrators from foreign actors. So let's say you've got, I know that gaming's a big deal. So let's say you've got a gaming application where people are buying and selling items from World of Warcraft. I'm making that up. And then somebody says, in exchange for money, I will slay thus and such a monster and bring you the suit of armor that it drops when I kill it. So you pay them, and then they bring you something else. And you're like, that's not what I paid for. Well, that's what it dropped. And so, well, okay, what do you do now? But the last thing you want is to have an arbitrator who's never played World of Warcraft and have no idea what you're talking about. And that's why in that contract you'd say disputes would be handled by one of our community members who understand leadership. And you'd have to pay them some fraction of the purchase price that's at stake. And they'll be trained. Our standard is the International Center for Dispute Resolution. They're using their rule set as ours, because it's a recognized standard and it's stood up in courts of law literally around the world. And we are recruiting people to be volunteers as well as to be paid. And we've got until, well, June 2nd to get the first round of arbitrators who's trained and volunteered. And we've actually got a cadre of folks who were arbitrators for 10 years ago who are very familiar with computer consensus-based system arbitration cases who are going to be involved in that. So it's looking tremendously good for us.
All right. Thank you, Thomas, for speaking to us tonight. I really appreciate it. I've been on the EOS mailing list since May, so I think it's a really exciting project. But I did want to bring up more of a sensitive topic. I'm sure you're aware that your CEO, Brock Pierce, was skewered pretty hard by John Oliver.
Our CEO is Brendan Bloomer.
Oh, is this different than EOS?
Yeah, we had a really awesome comedy sketch by John Oliver
Yeah, I
It's great. If you haven't seen it, you got to see it.
yeah,
Anyway,
I just want to
make
get
fun of a lot of different things, including one of our organizers, Brock, who has since, well, he was never part of our org chart, but he was one of the initial funders, and he's a big champion of the project.
sorry, I apologize for the misinformation. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I just want to give you an opportunity to address that if you wanted to.
I'd just say Oliver's really funny. You should watch his show.
So,
One more question.
we got one more question here.
One of the things that drew me initially to EOS was the parallel processing that you guys do. Can you just comment on that and the value of that innovation inside EOS?
Yeah, so one of the big challenges of blockchains, as most of you know, is that they're basically really slow, really expensive databases. And what you get in exchange for slow and expensive is you get immutability and you centralization. And people don't like slow and expensive. Why would you? So the way to speed up a blockchain, to scale it up, involves a bunch of different things, one of which is parallel execution. We've been working on parallelization since, well, July of last year. And it's not going to be ready for our June launch. We're going to launch single-threaded. But we have put in place all of the hooks and data structures we need to support parallelization, including regions, shards, and so forth. So once the remaining work is done to support parallel execution, and I mentioned we'll be able to upgrade the software without a fork. I'm hopeful, it's not a guarantee, but I'm hopeful we'll be able to move from single-thread to parallel execution, and a big boost in performance from that pretty soon. One thing we are launching, which you didn't ask about, that I should mention, is inter-blockchain communication. And that is the ability to have information on one blockchain reflected in another in a verifiable, provable way. And that'll be available at launch, we believe. So having some work done on one chain, some work done on another chain is another way to speed overall real-world throughput. That doesn't take us off the hook to deliver parallel execution, but we're still going to do that.
Very cool. So we got one more question, and then we'll wrap this up. So
super. I know we're recording this. I should make sure I say I am not an official spokesman, and nothing I'm saying is like,
Advice.
carved in stone with the logo on it. This is my best understanding as someone who works every day with developers.
Okay, it's Dion again, and I have one more question.
Awesome.
I don't expect you to give actually the names of certain projects, but do you have any blockchain applications that are going to be released on EOS that you're particularly excited about?
Actually, there's a website called EOSGO, EOSGO.io. They have a forum section with a listing of applications, and there's also a link to another. There's like several listings. I wish they'd consolidate them. But there's some amazing projects. And I've got a friend who works at a venture capital firm in California who seems, I can't talk about them, and it hurts to not talk about them.
Understandable.
Some exciting things that are not listed on the EOSGO forum that I'm hoping will be live on June 2nd or shortly thereafter. So there are use cases like medical records, like credentialing, tremendously important, like energy trading. Wouldn't it be cool to have a network of people with, small scale backyard energy generation, solar, wind, small hydro, where you could sell your energy onto the grid in a trustable way and buy money off that grid in a trustable way. We'd have a totally decentralized community energy system.
Yeah, I'm particularly excited about energy systems on the blockchain also. Well, thank you for your answer.
And Uber, why is there not a decentralized Uber? Well, there could be.
Right.
And on and on and on. The use cases just boggle the mind.
we're sneaking one more question in.
Super.
Hey there, this is Christopher. I had a question in terms of punishment. So people who do violate smart contracts and who are seem to have invalidated it by arbitrators. Is there going to be a punishment system for these people?
Right, an arbitration ruling certainly can include punishments. things like loss of tokens, confiscation of tokens, freezing of accounts, things like that. What we've created really, when I mentioned this before, what we're talking about is a community with a common resource. And that community has to manage that common resource in cooperative and pro-social ways. And I was deeply affected by a book I read when I was helping design the governance system. The book's called Governing the Commons by Eleanor Ostrom. And she records in the book dozens of examples of real-world, low-tech groups who manage common resources successfully, whether it's fisheries or irrigation systems or grazing rights or forests. Humans, we are clever monkeys, and we have figured out some interesting ways to work well and cooperate together. And one of the most important features of the system, she says, is the ability, number one, to monitor effectively when people break the laws, and number two, to sanction them very quickly and usually and pretty cheaply. You don't need big fines. You need a little embarrassment and a very quick fine. The system goes, oh, we caught you, slap on the wrist. And that tends to straighten most people out.
All right. Thanks for answering my question.
Yep.
Thomas, is your political career over?
My political career is very over.
Fair enough. Well, thank you for joining us tonight. And thanks to all of you who joined in person and all of you out there that are watching this on the live stream. I'm glad we have figured out our way of delivering this content to people around the world. Thank you. Nashville has an amazing opportunity to be a thought leader in this space. It's time for us all to come together. Let's collaborate. Let's make Nashville a leader in blockchain technology, especially in healthcare. Thank you to Anthony, and thank you to Thomas. And next month, we're looking at an agenda around, I think it's March 15th. I'm sorry, it's March now. I've lost track. April 19th. We're looking at ICOs and crypto focus. We're going to start talking about some new ICOs that are coming out and some exchanges. So it should be a cool agenda. Stay tuned for more information on the next meetup. And thank you all for coming out. I appreciate it. Let's give everybody a round of applause. Be safe driving home and have a good night. Thanks.